This is episode 703 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, a lot going on these days in the political scene still. New Mexico's Democratic Party picked their new chairwoman, and fitting very much along the lines of what we would come to expect from the Democrats in New Mexico. They pick somebody who raises money for the teachers' unions in New Mexico, in a state where our educational results are dead last. So, par for the course, right?
Yeah, I saw that, and you just have to shake your head. 50th in education, and we have managed to get a lot of funding to education. Teacher salaries are up. Educational attainment is not, and there hasn't even been a plan to improve education in New Mexico. Really, they the governor is really focused on this 4-day eliminating the 4-day school week on some of the rural schools that actually do better than most of the urban schools that are on 5-day school weeks. So figure that one out. But yeah, again, par for the course, and the core constituencies of the progressives in New Mexico, including the teachers union, the trial lawyers. I'm sure they'll be well served.
Yeah, and she takes over for Jessica Velasquez, who was the previous chair, did not run for reelection, probably wasn't going to have, we at the Rio Grande Foundation were probably not going to be enthralled with any of the people that might run the state of New Mexico's Democratic Party. But it is telling. Somebody who is involved with and supports financially the teachers unions, the number one interest group in education. If you talk to, obviously the governor and the legislature are the two leading entities that control the policies relating to education. I'm sorry, the local school boards, obviously they're disparate. They're covering whatever 88 districts across the state, and they are ultimately not in power in the same way that the governor and the legislature are. But this is a state that is dead last. This is a interest group that is one of the three legs of the stool that is the Democratic Party's special interests. Those being government unions, radical environmentalists, and trial attorneys. So, it's indicative of the way things are in this state. Failure is, it's not an obstacle, it's almost a prerequisite.
Well, yeah, it's all in how you define failure.
Well, that's true.
You and I define success. Well, let's define success in education is that our students are receiving better education, perform better on academic tests, and get through school and graduate. And the teachers union seems like they like higher salaries, but they don't like to change or have any modification of the status quo when it comes to the rules and the approach under which education is delivered.
Yeah, and just unfortunate, but we're going to keep the same education policies that have failed. And I was meaning to say that while the governor and the legislature are the ones who are elected to the positions that control education policy, the unions actually make the education policy, because nothing happens in New Mexico in education without the say-so of the unions, because they are the ones whose muscle and money gets the governor and the legislature elected. Now, we obviously have had Republican Governor Susana Martinez, Gary Johnson even, both of whom fought for various styles of reforms. Johnson for school vouchers, and choice, Martinez for the accountability mechanisms that were put in place in Florida and have since spread successfully to Mississippi and Louisiana. Neither reform proposal has been supported by the unions, and neither proposal has been adopted in any significant way in New Mexico. So, what happens is we spend more money and get worse results in New Mexico's education system because the system, as you say, it actually truly is designed to benefit the unions and their political allies, not the children.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing, Paul, is you mentioned local school boards, and that system, in terms of how much autonomy and how much authority they have, is largely controlled from the state as well. And there are states that have more local autonomy with regard to what happens at the school board. But in New Mexico, uh, the funding all runs through Santa Fe, and most of the policy runs through Santa Fe. And then, not that local school boards don't have an impact, but their range of authority is much lower than in other states that do better. And again, that's not the only thing, but that's just another facet of our system we have here.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next topic of interest is EV sales and a brief update on the EV situation in New Mexico. And I would say for a full discussion of this issue, check out the interview that is going to come out this week with Carlos Garcia of Garcia Automotive. Uh, Obviously, he is extremely knowledgeable, not just about the EV mandates and the kind of ongoing discussion with regard to New Mexico following California to 43%. But I did want to highlight a brief news item as of Q4 2024. So, the end of 2024, according to the Center for Automotive Innovation, their data shows that New Mexico EV sales are 5.53% of the total. New Mexico ranks 34th out of the states, 51 when you include Washington, D.C. Uh, but we are obviously nowhere near 43% as model year 2026 vehicles. And this is, you could say it's newsworthy. Carlos Garcia says that that those 2026, so affected by these regulations, are starting to show up on dealer lots right now, to the extent that they have vehicles that they can get, because of course 43% is well outside the realm of sales that are currently happening in New Mexico. So how are they going to square that circle? I'm sure Carlos would love to know, but so far, I don't think any car dealers in New Mexico really have a handle on what they're going to do and whether this is really going to be enforced fully upon them by the governor and her environment department. But according to this data that is available at the Heirs of Enchantment, the Center for Automotive Innovation data from the fourth quarter of 2024 indicates that Colorado has surpassed California as the leading EV sales by market share. 26.4%. California is at 26.19%. Everybody else, Washington and ironically, Washington and DC, so Washington State and the District of Columbia, are the only two others above 20% EV sales. And then you get into other states that have far fewer numbers, and all the way down to 34th is New Mexico. So what will happen? We don't know. And we're going to leave it up to our friends at Garcia Automotive and other car dealers to try to figure it out, unfortunately, because nothing that happened in this legislative session is going to change the situation.
No, Paul, and I would, if I were to guess, I would guess they would really back away from this because they're going to see all the damage that it's going to do. But there's no guarantee that that's the case. So um, it's not realistic. This policy was made in a vacuum during COVID when everyone thought, "Oh, EVs are the wave of the future, and everything is perfect." And in the meantime, reality has hit, not just in New Mexico, by the way, but all across the country. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens. This is going to be an interesting one to watch. And if you are in the automotive business, a car dealer or somebody that has to import auto parts between everything that's going on, it's going to be a really interesting time for you.
Yeah, exactly. And throw on top of that tariffs and attempts to overturn California's EV mandate. You've got a recipe for a lot of challenges in the automotive industry. Thankfully, my family's purchased all the vehicles we're going to need for the next uh, few years. So hopefully, costs don't spiral too badly. Supply chain disruptions from both the tariffs and the EV mandates are minimized, and that we can all get through this. But it is going to be an interesting time. Let's just say that.
Yo, Paul, it's like a 1960s soap opera cliffhanger. Will the governor relent? Will tariffs be set back? Will California be their approach overturned? Wait and hear as the wheel turns here in New Mexico. So,
Yeah. All right. I will be traveling later this week to Las Cruces. I am speaking to the Coalition of Conservatives in Action meeting on Thursday night, uh, 6 p.m. That is at Kitchen Craft, 980 North Tell Shore, right next to Rudy's Barbecue, I'm told. And I'll be talking to them about both the legislative session and the report that we did on New Mexico's declining economic freedom. And then on Friday, I will be talking to Americans for Prosperity from 11 to 2. I won't be speaking the entire time. No one will be speaking that entire time, but they will be serving you lunch, and it's a free event. You got to go RSVP at heirsoфenchantment.com. You can find the post about the two presentations, but I'll be talking about taxes, the tax structure of New Mexico, Wally and I's favorite topic, of course, the gross receipts tax, and what happened and didn't happen this legislative session, which was a little more interesting given the retroactive view we have now. It wasn't great during the session, but I'm glad that largely all the taxes, except for the tax known as a royalty payment uh, on oil and gas in southeast New Mexico, that one did pass, but we managed to avoid other tax hikes this legislative session. So yeah, I'll make sure to pour a shot out for you there,
all
Wally.
right, very good,
Pour
Paul.
one out for my homie
Yeah,
down there.
and so anytime Wally says gross receipts tax, if you're playing the drinking game, you have to drink. So I wonder if that extends to your event in Las Cruces, Paul.
It could be coffee, and you could
Oh
just
yeah, there
have
you go, there you go. It doesn't have to be a
be
shot.
shaking. So, uh, relaying some information on a proposed regulation. This is coming from the New Mexico Environment Department's Occupational Health and Safety Bureau. They have submitted a petition to who else, Wally? Who else but the new, most powerful, most unaccountable regulatory agency in the state of New Mexico, the
And
Environment Improvement Board.
yes,
Yay! Our good friends over there. They will be potentially considering a rule that could dramatically impact businesses all across the state of New Mexico. And it's on something random that I've never really contemplated regulations on, but heat. Heat. Not the Miami Heat, not the basketball team, just good old fashioned heat. And it's the proposed heat illness and injury prevention standard. If the heat index meets or exceeds 80 degrees, just 80 degrees, Then you have to have an assessment tool in place. I spell that out at the Heirs of Enchantment post on this. You have control measures that have to be implemented, including new and returning employees and gradually introducing them to heat conditions closely observed by supervisor or designee for first 7 days of employment. Uh, just a very onerous set of regulations, folks. The regulatory period ends on May 30th. We've had some success with this administration in pushing back against her dumbest ideas. And maybe this isn't quite at the level of composting and doing all the things with school lunches that we were able to win that battle on. But this is a very troubling and dangerous and expensive regulation that is facing businesses yet again here in New Mexico.
Yeah, Paul, this is one that certain jobs are warm, and guess what? It's hot in New Mexico. And so, what happens in the summer if you're a roofer? You get up very early to avoid the worst heat of the day. You take precautions, and let's face it, if you can't handle 80-degree temperature, many jobs are just probably not for you. You know what I mean? If you have health things, so that pretty much takes out construction and many other similar jobs that are kind of the working trades. Uh, Also, when it comes to this, the the paperwork involved with this, if you have a hot area. And then I'm sure, Paul, we'll get to the point where if this thing passes, we'll then need to keep adding the heat police to go out and do heat stings like we used to do, and they still do actually, stings on not having your ID in a bar to see if it's too warm. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this is one of those that I think this is a solution looking for a problem. And believe me, Paul, I've worked in some of the hottest environments in the world. I really have. I had a summer job that I worked at a copper smelter when the outside
Mm.
temperature was about 90 degrees, and in the smelter it's 120 or 130, 140 degrees. And guess what? Guess what the contractor did without government regulation, Paul? He would give us regular breaks to go and get water and cool ourselves off because they have a brain. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's one of those. And the same thing, if you have a job where it's warm, usually one or two, well, a combination of two things happen is, yeah, if you're in a kitchen that's super hot, you take regular breaks to drink water. You go to a cooler area for a few minutes, and then you get back in there and get to work. Or if that's too much for you, that again, that job's probably not for you. But guess what, Paul? People have been damaged by heat, and they've been gotten hot, and they've gone to the hospital. And guess what? Some of these people were doing, Paul. They were playing golf, and they were fishing, and they were on boats. And so it's one of those things. Yeah, the heat's something to take seriously, and I do think adults do that. You know what I mean? So this is one of those. Again, I think this one's just absolutely ridiculous because I have yet to see the place where, when it's hot, employers and employees don't work jointly together to figure out how to make it through that. Because again, no one wants to hurt themselves, and no employee wants to hurt their employees. And guess what? They have brains and they deal with it.
Yeah, and just real quickly, this is one of those regulations where I think the process of having somebody tasked with supervising this whole heat situation will be at least as onerous as the regulations themselves. 80 degrees is a relatively low temperature when you talk about the weather in New Mexico. I mean,
Oh, that's relatively cool. If you're
yeah,
working on the drilling rig or you're doing construction in the summer, you're happy when it's 80.
this is applicable both indoors and outdoors.
Yeah.
So, a construction site where you may have completed the outer frame of a building, but it's not air conditioned yet. There's no HVAC or anything.
Right.
You've got a lot of, you're going to have somebody sitting there tracking all this. It's just absolutely nuts. And of course, I'm going to check this from the, well, there's a couple articles. The Santa Fe New Mexican has done really good work on this issue. Of course, they had an opinion piece from 3 days ago. Rising heat, high heat days endanger New Mexico workers. And the two people writing the article, president of the American Federation of Teachers and the executive director of the Healthy Climate New Mexico. Now, there have been cases in Albuquerque at the beginning of the school year where the AC units have not been fully functional and the classrooms have gotten too hot. That is unacceptable in my opinion. Obviously, that's not a resource lack issue. A district that's got $33,000 plus per kid.
Yeah, that's a focus of resources.
Yeah, that is a lack of focus and taking the initiative to do that. And also the fact that we start school way too early, and whether we need all the hours and days is a separate question, but certainly we don't need all the days off, the random days off in the middle of the year. So there's that. But this almost seems to be at its heart another ploy by the Earth is burning crowd to say, oh, well, it's getting so much hotter that we're having to endure this hot weather. What's 80 degrees is really half the year if you're outside in New Mexico. Now, I grew up back east where the heat index is really impacted by humidity.
Yeah, and in New Mexico, the absolute temperature is really close to the heat index most of the time because we have low humidity. But heck, you could get an 80 heat index pretty easily if it's 75 degrees outside if it's humid. So
yeah. And someone who we mutually both know well in the restaurant industry, you're working with an open flame. I mean, there's all kinds of, you get in the back of a kitchen in a restaurant and it's hot as well. And it's just going to be incredibly expensive. So I guess we'll just wrap this all up by saying, make sure you go comment. They need to hear from you, not just business owners, but definitely business owners. And also average members of the public, people who are concerned about what's happening in our state and the attack on businesses and the attack on our economy. This is yet another one of those, and we need to push back. So
yeah, and then Paul, what happens when it's above 80 and you go to the Albuquerque Zoo? Are we going to have heat monitors at all public places? It's one of those things. Same issue. It which just shows that it's like, again, probably not the best.
Well, then we could have the animals holding little signs.
You're killing me with global warming.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, polar bears may have right. I think the lions and the African savanna animals should be okay. But
no, we need to keep them at 80 degrees. That's the rule.
Well, giant fans. The penguins will definitely have thoughts. But, it's funny if it wasn't so sad. So the next thing is our friends at Axios. I just joke, they're not our friends, but they're a media outlet nationwide.
Paul, why is this important? The Axios tagline at the bottom of every one of their stories. So
they do like to promote themselves, but they had a event in Santa Fe, and it's interesting for two reasons. One is, so they had these panelists, one of which was our land commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, who's running for lieutenant governor. One was Misty from Namoga.
Missy Courier.
Missy Courier from Namoga, and just a group of panelists talking about keeping New Mexico on track for its green energy. But the challenges, obviously, Donald Trump, very, very bad orange man that they have to deal with, and just talking through all this. And it's fine, whatever, have a conversation about these topics. Now, I did think that there was some interesting information. Stephanie Garcia Richard, who has really promoted as land commissioner renewable energy, uh, she was basically confronted with the idea: is renewable energy ever going to be able to surpass traditional oil and gas resources from a fundraising perspective? And uh, that is simply, the article now, the headline in the online version says state officials say generation of renewables is not enough to replace oil revenue. And my rejoinder to that is, duh. That is the most obvious statements in the history of statements. And even Garcia Richard acknowledges that, even though she likes to focus all of her time and attention on renewables, except for raising the tax on the oil and gas industry in the form of the royalty payments. But that is one aspect of that. So, Wally, I don't know. I got the second point that I want to make, but I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this kind of ridiculous and obvious situation here.
Yeah, and as you say, no duh. And here's the thing, Paul, is the amount of revenue that's made is profound. And so if you look at the second, third, fourth, or fifth best uses for leases of New Mexico state trust lands, we're talking about things like raising cattle and putting windmills and putting solar panels, and it's all pretty far down the line. And so,
Yeah, I
yeah,
believe grazing and minerals, and even like just rents from
rents for surface to
yeah,
do whatever. So it's not very much. And so the other thing is because the renewables are it is in vogue at every level to subsidize wind and solar and the like. They cut them a mighty sweet deal on the land, on the state trust land, because that's something that is a policy of the Democrats in New Mexico, is to get all of this if possible. So they don't really pay very much to have these solar panels and windmills on public land. So that further takes that the other way. And the answer is and it shall always be so. It's one of those things that if you could make a lot of money off of raw land that you lease and as opposed to sell, there's private land that people could do that too. And so, they're the lowest cost provider of last resort because they have these plots all over that they can lease for solar projects. And so a lot of them get done there. But that doesn't mean it's ever going to be a big money maker. And the discussion about making the money is almost, irrelevant, meaning it's like,
yeah.
who cares? So it's like, if you want to talk about how we manage those lands, the ones that aren't used for oil and gas production, so be it. But just know that that isn't a discussion about making money from those lands, which, after all, is the constitutional initiative of the state land office, is to make money for schools from the lands owned by the state.
Yep. Now, the original headline in the print edition of the Albuquerque Journal, which I still get, in was debate. It was discussing the idea of diversifying state revenues. Now, it was the same article, but the headline was different. Now, in a way, that is a separate conversation that we've also had, which neither of these conversations are about the issues that really matter. And that's unfortunate because I guess you can point the blame at Axios, but of course, New Mexico's politicians love to talk about things that are totally irrelevant to the benefit of the citizens of the state. But yeah, diversifying our economy is important, but diversifying state government revenues is not how you diversify an economy. Diversifying revenues is raising taxes. Maybe you lower them elsewhere, but the assumption is kind of ceteris paribus. It's you're kind of trying to generate the same basic amount of revenue just from different ways. Now, oil and gas is not, uh, there's not enough different activities, different businesses that we're going to generate anywhere near the amount of revenue that this state has seen in recent years through other economic means relative to oil and gas. It's just there's no other way around it. But the conversation that needs to be had and that nobody even wants to discuss is, how do we diversify New Mexico's economy, which in turn will, of course, diversify our state's revenues. But what are you going to do, Wally?
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We don't do that, Paul. So all the things that would diversify the economy when we have record amounts of revenue in the state, just the short list is get rid of the income tax, reform the gross receipts tax, look at how regulation impacts our state, take on the trial attorneys, and make sure that healthcare isn't driven out of the state. All those things, education, the things we talk about all the time on Tipping Point, New Mexico. Those are the things that will help diversify the economy of the state. We don't want to do any of those. So right now, anyone who says they want to diversify the economy, I was like, yeah, no, you don't, because none of your policies are anything to do with that. Now, when a New Mexico politician says they want to diversify the revenue in the state, that's true. Meaning we don't want to be caught holding the bag as state government, but it's like they kind of get the cause and effect confused. They're like, we don't like all of our revenue coming from oil and gas, and those guys, we hate oil and gas and we want it to go away, but man, it's nice to have that money. So we want it to come somewhere else. But that's as far as New Mexico has really gotten, really since the Richardson administration, with a little bit of the Martinez thrown in there. And again, a lot of it has to do with the legislature. But if you look, what are we doing that would encourage a diversified economy? We are, it's a pretty bleak situation for the past 20 years.
Well, the reality is that they're kind of like the law of thermodynamics. There's no other revenue source to take from besides oil and gas. So the idea of diversifying your revenue picture is completely unrealistic. I mean, yeah, you could raise the tax on cigarettes or do something else, but you're not going to generate even a tiny fraction of the amount of money that you need to replace oil and gas, or a significant portion of oil and gas.
Well, and Paul, I think you could do it over time with making New Mexico a better place to do business.
Right.
But no, can you do it in one legislative session? No, you can't do that, because at some point, if you raise the taxes and the royalties on oil and gas, or the regulations so much, it's just going to go elsewhere. And there is a limit to that. It's a world market for the commodities. So yeah, I'm with you. There's nothing in one session that you can do. But here's the thing: diversifying the economy isn't one bill and life is done. Making New Mexico a better place to do business and a more successful state, that's going to take some effort. And I argue that we haven't really done anything to encourage that recently.
I would be willing to try my hand with a bill that eliminated the state personal income tax, and that would diversify.
Okay, and that would be a start. Yeah. That's a start. Oh yeah, that would diversify our revenue by taking away a source. There you go.
It would actually result in a more diversified revenue picture
from an industry point of view.
5 to 10 years. Yeah. It would take a little time, because you aren't just going to pick up your business because any state eliminated your personal income tax or doesn't have one. I mean, we see Texas. There's a lot of businesses that are not headquartered in Texas still, and some of that's for other reasons, because their property taxes are onerous, et cetera, et cetera. But New Mexico, yeah, it's anyway.
Okay,
this
here's
this
the
article
thing.
really
Get
really
used to oil and gas and slap the headline writer, particularly on that second headline, because that had nothing to do with it. Put your marijuana cigarette down when you write the headlines next time. So, because
well,
you missed the point.
in the whole thing, that's the problem, is that it all misses the points. It's all completely made up, and the facts don't matter. It's just totally it's irrelevant, but it's the kind of thing that reinforces this idea that we're somehow hemmed in here in New Mexico to this reliance on oil and gas that they all want to prevent. But the reality is that that's where all the money comes from, and the reason that they won't kill the golden goose is simply because they know that that would destroy the entire state. And that's when it may take that for the people of New Mexico to actually wake up and do something different. So theoretically, maybe a 4 or 8 year Deb Haaland term in the governor's mansion could potentially do that. That may that may be an extreme situation.
Yeah,
But
but keep in mind we have billions of dollars of
that's true.
reserves. So, that's the other thing. And then why do you think, seriously, is like, am I just crazy that we have no desire to truly diversify our economy because we never do anything that would encourage business growth? And let's be clear, the ways to diversify your economy are to get more retirees to come here, get more government spending from Washington, or grow the private sector. And those first two, I guess we could call those diversifying our economy. But when I say the term, I mean the third one only. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna leave it there. Sorry, we're kind of
bloviating on my part.
well. I think we're just frustrated
Yeah.
because I again, do they not want to diversify the economy and
Yeah,
grow
they
it?
don't. They don't.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
and if they want to, they're not willing to take any action that will actually help it. So
yeah.
that's where, they'd like it to be diversified
Do you
if it
want to
just
do you want to
happens.
lose 500 pounds of body weight because you're 700 pounds, or do you want to keep going the way you're going? Oh
I
well,
know you were looking at me when you said that,
no,
Paul.
Wally.
That's
I was looking at this.
hypothetical
That's why I said
person.
500, because I know that's a huge number. But we're like that in New Mexico. All right, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.